right. All right, everyone. I am so excited to have the incredible David Marsh here today with us. Incredible story and also lots of offerings for the world, sharing about these concepts that we are all joining together on around how this life can be an experience of learning and creation. And so I'm just so grateful to connect with David. We had a wild day getting here, and it's a triumph to even just be on the call. So, why don't you tell us just a brief introduction about yourself?
So I'm a guy that is a seeker. I'm a filmmaker. I create content. And part of my journey has been, well, how can I share the good news? And I've deconstructed from one narrative. Now I've picked up a different narrative. And I'm here to seek, I'm here to explore and expand and see what is there that we are here. What can I find meaning in? What's this whole thing about? So that's been my journey for the past several years.
Yeah, well, you already touched on one of our connection shared experiences is that religious experience, the good news. Something that has been a long journey for me has been figuring out how to retell or reframe that story of coming out of a really black and white, good, bad, right, wrong type of a religious upbringing, and seeing all of the beauty that I was able to get out of it and how to move forward with that without being limited by it. So, would you be willing to talk a little bit about how that experience was for you?
Yeah, when I was a little boy, my dad sat me down and he said, David, God loves you so much that if you were the only person on earth, he would still have sent Jesus to die for your sins. And I was like, oh, wow, what did I do that was so wrong? Jesus still has to die for my sin if I'm the only person. Well,
Yeah.
David, you're born with original sin. There's nothing you can do about it. You're a victim, and you have to have somebody do something for you. So my whole life, I was like,
Mm.
oh, well, what happens if I don't accept Jesus? Well, then you burn in hell, conscious eternal torment. And I'm like, well, I don't want that. So I did accept Jesus into my heart. I remember having a conversion experience when I was 10 years old, and I felt light. My sins were forgiven. And I went through my life thinking that I was safe, I was secure because I was given this certainty. And in
Mhm.
fact, I was a little bit superior than everyone else because I had the truth. And I
Ah.
lived in that narrative. In fact, when I was 17, I met this girl in college and she was awesome. And we had sex. And I went, uh-oh, that
Oh
means we're probably going to
no.
go to hell. So we have to get married. So we got married when I was 19. And I went, I can't go to college anymore. We have to have a job. I have to have a job. So I joined the army. I got a degree in biology. I did all the things. I didn't want to do any of that. I started a business installing underground sprinkler systems. And I did that. And I was in the church and I served and I played the piano. I was on the worship team and I led worship music. And at some point, I began writing songs for kids and I called it Kids World Praise. And it's still out there in the ether. And
Wow.
the whole narrative of you're not good enough, you have to do something. I just was like, okay, well, I know I'm saved, but I got to keep trying to do good works. And I had to make sure other people were saved from
Mhm.
hell. So I spent most of my life trying to save people. And in 2015, uh, I just to complete that thought, I did eventually get into video production and I started creating video content for businesses. And in 2015, I heard a podcast by Rob Bell, and he said, what if
Love
heaven and
Rob.
hell aren't places to go? What if it's rather a state of consciousness and you can be in heaven or hell right here, right now? What if it's not about getting out of here to get to there? What if this is where the action is? And don't
Mm.
worry about the afterlife. And I'm like, what? I got to do some studying.
What?
So I got on the internet and I Googled what happens after we die. And I found out there's a thing called a near-death experience. And so I studied that and I got a hold of Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. And he said something I'd never heard before. We are all one. I'm like, what does that mean? I had no clue. And so I started a talk show with my friend. My friend was, he was a gay man, and I was taught that gay people were going to go to hell. And I met him in a business meeting, and I'm like, hey, I need to know more about who you are and what you do. And he says, well, I'm kind of into spirituality. And I was like, well, teach me more. So he and I got to be really good friends. And it was because he was such a kind, nice person. And I was like, well, I don't see how a kind, nice person could go to hell. And so I wanted to learn more. And so that was my experience. So that's how I started.
Oh my word, Dave. There's like 40,000 directions that I could go after that. I am so excited that we actually have so much more intersecting than I even originally understood. One piece about like how shaped you were by the concept of original sin. I have been wanting to be able to find a way to convey that the just like the whole universe altering impact of that concept and how it is experienced by a child and shapes like can shape the rest of the trajectory, because that was so huge for me too. That idea that I'm a problem, that there's something inherently wrong with me, is something that I am still working through in therapy. And my new sort of main focus in life is sharing the concept of absolute innocence, because the more I study, the more I understand both spiritual and physical perspectives, there's no way to explain it except that we are innocent, that we can't be guilty, and that condemning someone or conveying that it's possible to condemn someone is the best way to control them.
Yeah.
Which now makes a lot of sense. But when you're that little kiddo, and then you're even that teenager and that adult man trying to demonstrate and prove that you're working hard enough to make up for that original sin and to pay off this unbelievable thing of Jesus dying just for Dave. You know, what were some of the moments in there, sort of 2015 especially, that allowed you to start contemplating, if this is possible, how do I support myself in really reprogramming, right? All of this that you went through in the early years.
Yeah, that narrative of you're unworthy is so pervasive in everything. It's in the music and the worship music. I have friends that are in the spiritual community. They're like, "Oh, I just love worship music." Really? Because the whole thing is, I'm unworthy, you're
Mm-hmm.
worthy, not
Mm-hmm.
me. I'm gonna go to
Mm-hmm.
hell, but you're gonna say yes.
It's
None of that narrative is
intense.
good. It's so damaging. And okay, here's an example. So today I'm a video producer. I'm filming an interview with someone that's filming with the wrestler Goldberg. And then afterwards, he goes, "Hey Dave, do you want a picture with Goldberg?" And I'm like, "Oh no, he's probably really busy and he just talked to you." And I went, "What am I doing? That unworthy just today, a
Yeah.
matter of 2 hours ago, is
Yeah.
still in my
It's still
programming."
in there.
And I had to sit there and go, fuck no, I am worthy. You know what? I'm a great person. He needs to know that I filmed him today, whatever. And so
Yeah.
instead of shaking his hand, I said, here, let's do this. Let's pose like this. And I put my fist up, like, yeah, we're wrestler guys. And it was so fun. And I was like, what am I going to do? Go, oh no, I don't want my picture. He's too busy. That's so
Yeah.
dumb. So that unworthy narrative
Yeah.
is so
It
challenging for me
is.
to undo. So what I had to do is find some proof. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a possibility hell's not real, I need to know it. And I can't go to
Ah.
some counselor, I can't go to a therapist because they're just going to tell me you're dumb, hell's not real. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you're wrong. Hell is real. And if I'm incorrect about this,
Right.
and
The
I'm trying
stakes
to
are
go on
too
this
high.
journey, I might go to hell, and I don't want to risk that. So
Yeah.
I would drive around Phoenix, where I live, Phoenix, Arizona, and I would be in my car. And I'd be so angry at God, and I would say, I will never love you because I think you're a dick, but I'll worship you because I don't want to go to hell unless I
Mhm.
can prove there is no hell. So I started reading books by Christians who were trying to deconstruct themselves. And they're
Yeah.
like, I don't think hell is real. And, I think all the people that wrote the Bible, they were incorrect about it. And Gehenna was a trash pit and all
Mm, mm,
the
mm.
little technical things. So I had to start at the Bible level. And
Mhm.
when I began to read more books and study more about NDEs and broaden my ability to create information available to me, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of people out there who have already figured this out a long time ago. And so I was like, oh, I'm way late to the party. I was 45 years old when I started going,
Ah,
oh, maybe this isn't real. I had kids in college, yeah,
yeah.
high school, and it was a big deal.
It is
I had to
such a
challenge all
big
my belief
deal.
systems. So that I got a hold of Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. And once I read that, I went, oh, okay, okay, okay. This guy did 7,000 case studies and everybody said the same thing. None of these people knew each other. It was over 40 years. It's not like a small sample
Yeah.
size. And they all said, I'm a spiritual being. I'm a soul that came here to experience and explore and expand. And it's not a pass fail test. It's
Yeah.
here to have experiences
Yeah.
to figure out who you are. And I'm like, okay, all right. So it was defined that the religions,
Mhm.
we choose to go into them so we can inform ourselves, and they are earth mythologies. I'm like, earth
Yeah.
mythologies? I love that.
I
So
love that.
that's when I started to break free from that.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am 100% going to read that book. And I just want to give you a big hug because a 45, like I was, my big questions began early, but the really like giving them time and space were in my 20s. And I I can't imagine being 20 more years in. And I just really want to tell you, I love you so much. And it's so brave that you're continuing to move in this direction
Yeah,
because
thank you.
the intensity that people outside of this experience don't understand is how literally your survival is so intertwined with it on both an earth level because the connections you make through the church and all that, but also this psychological piece about the presence of hell. And I don't know if you realize that I had an NDE and that crossover for us is also really special because that was the piece where I was able to go, I have done everything that was supposed to send me to hell and I didn't go to hell. And so I was like, what could this mean? Right? Because I died of a suicide attempt overdose.
Mm,
And that was a straight one-way ticket to hell, right? And
yeah.
the overdose was related to my queer identity. And so it was a double whammy, I had done two of the greatest things that I was not allowed to do, and yet I ended up in perfect bliss, oneness, best thing ever, way better than what I thought heaven would be. And, as I started to expose myself to NDEs, I couldn't find a one who had gone to hell. Not a ever single one. In all of your study, have you ever come across a one?
I have seen some Christian people that are saying this man had an NDE and he went to hell. I used to read the books by Kenneth Hagin, and he had an experience where he
Uh-huh.
went to hell. And I'm 100% convinced the reason they had those experiences
Yeah,
is because that's what they expected in the afterlife. That
interesting.
is what they expected. That's what they
Mhm.
received. I've also heard people go, oh yeah. And then after a while, I went, okay, there's no demons and pitchforks. So what happens next? Because they were just in this black, dark space. And then
Mhm.
suddenly a light, and they look up, and the person, their soul guide goes, are you done? You
Yeah,
want to
you
come back
wanted to
home?
do this.
And they
Yeah.
go, you want to stay here? And they're like, no. Well, then get out of
Yeah.
it. Oh, I can do that. Yes, you are responsible. You're not a victim even in
Mm,
the afterlife.
that is
Oh,
so wild.
boom, and they switch.
Well, and I really resonated with what you said about Rob Bell. I respect him a lot for being sort of a gateway for a lot of
Yeah,
people. Because like you touched on, for a lot of us, we have to go first through the Bible and get our proof there before we can get proof outside of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And Rob has really served. It in a way that was risky for him. Um,
Yeah.
to be that bridge for people speaking the languages of both sides. But that piece around the hell is actually inside of us,
Yeah.
and the heaven is inside of us, and we can experience both. And for so many people who really feel stuck in the hell of being a person, stuck in however they describe it, stuck in poverty or relationships that are damaging, or just mental health stuff, for those folks who don't have this like perspective of emerging out through leaving religion or through one of these other experiences, I love to share these stories because it's an opportunity for them to see a possibility, even if they don't have an extreme situation like you and I did. There's a level like maybe that gay guy that you connected with that I appreciate, that I had an identity marker that was damned, because it gave me the opportunity to be like, "Oh, well, I can't do this, so maybe I can consider other options." But for a lot of people like yourself, you were, a white married man with kids and singing worship music. So you were like thumbs up all around from the church community. So for you to question it and consider leaving it is even more intense. What would you share about like how you found and continued to have that courage, especially in those early days?
Well, it's very challenging. I did lose all community. I lost
Right.
all my friends that, were in that narrative. I
Yeah.
mean, we listened to Christian music and went to Christian restaurants and drank
Yep.
milk from Christian cows and
Yeah.
just do everything Christian,
I
you
get
know.
it.
And my parents to this day, they wring their hands and they're like, "Oh, you're deceived by the devil. There's demons that want to
Yeah.
steal your soul." So I don't even have a closeness with my own mommy.
Yeah.
So,
I
I'm like, "Oh, we'll
know.
we'll talk about the weather. I'll send them a picture and hey, I went to did this thing, but I can't even share the most important
Mm.
things that I've done. I've created content about the soul journey. I can't even tell them about that because
Yeah.
they think I'm deceiving other people.
Right.
So, and I chose this journey. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's there to inform me. And it's for me to learn self love. And that's the biggest thing. I was taught you can't love yourself. You're only
Yeah.
supposed to love God. And part
Yeah.
of this journey for me has been about self love. So there's been many things involved in that. The very first experience I had, I went to my first woo woo conference, something that was a non Christian conference. It's called
Ah.
Celebrate Your Life in Scottsdale, Arizona. And there was a woman there named Denise Lynn. And
Mm.
Denise does group hypnotherapy sessions or group regression sessions. And I had this experience of seeing myself as a Native American Indian. And she's like, now you just close your eyes and everybody just listen to this guided meditation. And suddenly I look down and I see moccasins and buffalo and I see a tomahawk in my hand. And I'm like, oh, I'm definitely an Indian. That's narrative. I'm an Indian. What is going on? And then I see myself running into a log cabin and it's on fire and I'm killing people. And I'm like, what in the hell is happening? I don't want to kill people. I would never do that. I'm a very kind, respectful, nice person. David's nice. So she goes, okay, everybody come back out. And if you saw unicorns and rainbows and butterflies, oh, I'm so happy. And I've got this wild-eyed look and I'm sweating. I'm like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm breathing hard. She must have observed that. And she said, okay, if you've seen something traumatic, something that you didn't necessarily expect, or something that was violent, you can go back and change the energy of that. She said, maybe if you saw somebody with a gun, it turns into a bouquet of roses or something like that to change the energy. And I'm like, well, I'm definitely going to need to
You're
change the
like,
energy.
let's do
So
that.
she says, just close your eyes. And I envision I'm back in that scene. And I walk up to the lady and I hold out some flowers and I say, I'm really sorry for killing you, but you killed my family. And I don't know why, but I had to try to pay you back, but I'm really sorry. Will you please forgive me? And she
Oh,
said, yes, I will
whoa.
forgive you. And so that was November of 2016.
Uh,
Fast forward a couple months into January of 2017, and I have a son that is in active addiction at the time and
Mm,
heroin addiction, and he had an overdose in the beginning of
mm,
2017. And I went into his room, or I heard him gurgling, and I'm like, oh no, he is somehow he can't breathe. I had to break down the door. Sure enough, he was purple. I was able to get him CPR, get him to come back again. He later told me, he said, Dad, I had a near-death experience. He said, do you remember that story you told me about that hypnotherapy and that group session? He said, Dad, I was the little baby that you couldn't save in that lifetime. He said, and this now we've completed karma because you did CPR on me in this lifetime and you were able to save my life. So that karma has been completed between us. I'm like, what? I go, what else did you hear in your near-death experience? He goes, she, talking about this beautiful female guide, she told me many things, but she said I wouldn't remember them. And I said, I'm going to remember everything. And she laughed and said, no, you won't, but I'm going to let you remember this thing. Tell your dad. And so I went, wow, thank you. So I knew there was something real about hypnotherapy, and that piqued my interest. And so I then began a quest to learn more about the inner knowing. And I did some sessions, and I had some experiences. I also did an ayahuasca ceremony that informed me, and so there's a whole bunch of things that I found the answers are within, and that has been my moniker ever since.
yeah, yeah. So these really profound experiences were incredibly, it sounds like, supportive in allowing you to continue to move in this direction that also resulted in a lot of loss. And I'm curious about, like, in between and even now in those moments where you're like, I just want to tell my heart and soul to my mom and I want her to be proud of everything that I'm doing, what are the, like, little in between moments, not the mountaintops of the hypnosis and the clarity, but the in between moments? How do you support that part of yourself? You gave a beautiful example with the experience with the picture, which I got to see. I'm so glad you followed through and took that picture with that wrestler. Um, but you were able to catch it and you were able to say, oh, hey, you know what? I am going to take this picture and redirect that. What are some of the other little things that you do on the in between to support yourself?
It's been important for me to put myself first in some experiences. What do I need in this moment? And it is a constant struggle when people are
Yeah.
like, hey, can you meet me over here and do this thing? I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I could, but I was gonna go do, I don't know, I wanted to watch a football game and what's on, but whatever, okay. And so sometimes I'll do
Mm,
those things and then I find myself being resentful
yeah.
because I agreed to go do something at that time. There could have maybe been a different time, or I could have
Yeah.
said no. So I've had to learn to say no. And someone taught me that self-care is health-care. And they said
Ah.
no is a complete sentence. And I went, oh. And that came through my journey when I said, I got to know more. And I took yoga teacher training because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I got to learn more about this stuff. What else is out there?
Mm-hmm.
And that informed my journey, and I learned about breath work, and that informed my journey. And then I started a talk show called Exploring the Human Journey, and I began to interview people in a video style. And I would say, tell me what you're doing, and they're like, well, I study the chakra systems. I'm like, what does that even mean? Oh, there's these energy sources and they have different colors and they mean different things. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I was kindergarten, David. I
Yeah.
didn't know
Yeah.
anything. And I learned about numerology and human design and gene
Yeah.
keys and
Yeah.
the I Chi and all the things. And I learned, I was literally told when I was a kid, don't ever do astrology. And
I
if somebody
know.
asks you your sign, tell them it's the sign of the cross and you're covered by the
Yeah.
blood of Jesus. So I was terrified of
Same.
that. And then I learned that astrology is just simply your hardwiring. You as a soul,
Yeah.
you pick who you want to become and the lessons you want to learn. And if you look at astrology, it simply goes, oh, yeah, this is your hardwiring. Oh, it's not spooky or scary. It doesn't even necessarily have to be predictive, but it's simply there to inform your journey. So, man, I love it all. And
It
people
just
ask, is it real? I'm like, well, I don't know what is and isn't real, but I know what has been good for me. For me, it's been real. So I've
yeah.
tried a lot of things.
And I love that for me, I had a period of time in between leaving the church and coming back to spirituality that was about 10 years. And I just shut everything down and I didn't let myself have any connection. And I love that it sounds like you were able to take that seeker, that devotional student energy and redirect it so that it would continue to bring meaning for you and connection with purpose and all of that. I really loved what you touched on, which is the is common across many cultures, but I think particularly those of us who came out of evangelical Christianity with the constant need to self-sacrifice. For me, it was really like I was told so often that I needed to be Christ-like, and Christ was equated with martyrdom, right? And so I took that to mean self-sacrifice was the way to be like Jesus. And I'm curious, in your studies, how have you like shifted that energy and continue to work on shifting that energy, I imagine, with understanding different perspectives on Christ, maybe anything else that you have to share on that?
No greater love has a man than he lay down his life for
Yeah.
another. Sacrifice. Yeah, that's a strong narrative also. Um, let's see. A friend of mine is a psychic medium, and she says, I think I have a word for you. And she says, I see Jesus coming in, but it's weird because he won't come close between us, and he stands far away. And she's like,
Mm,
it's weird, but he says, everything that he's doing is great and I love him so much. And she goes, oh, she goes, well, do you have a message for him? He goes, no, he's doing great. And she says, it's weird because he's like in jeans and t-shirts. And I go, huh? I go, really? Because for me, when you say Jesus, all I hear is you're a problem. Jesus is the
yeah.
solution. So then I hold
Mm,
up my middle finger and I'm like, this is what I think of Jesus, because the narrative I was given was the
yeah.
only function he had was to save me from my sins. And it's been a challenge for me to really embrace the loving Yeshua, the ascended master teacher. I'm like, God, I
Yeah.
don't even know if Jesus was a real guy. I don't know if it was a thing
Yeah.
people made up. So it was the coolest thing, though. She says, and then he just disappeared. And she said, I thought he was going to say, if he ever needs me, just tell him I'll be there. But she goes, as soon as I thought that, he goes, no, gross. Don't tell him that. He's good. He says, I'm his
He
brother.
was
I'm not his
releasing
savior.
you.
And I was like, okay, that's a Jesus I can get with.
Oh my
So,
gosh. He was
yeah,
respecting your autonomy, and he was saying,
yeah,
"I don't need to come close to you because I know how damaging this narrative has been."
yeah.
What an
So I love that guy. Love that
incredible.
guy. Me and him, we can hang out.
Wow. That's so respectful.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is the essence of something that I'm looking to do in my life, where it's like, hey, if you like with family members or past church, folks who won't talk to me or whatever, if you need me to play that role for you or hold that, whatever for you, you just go ahead, you can do that. And I feel like Jesus was giving you that, like, hey, if you're not on board with me, like, we're cool, you're good, you don't need to be on board with me, I don't need you to even understand me from a different angle. You can just do you and you don't need to do the Jesus thing. How gracious.
It was beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really going to stick with me, Dave. I'm going to think a
Yeah.
lot more about that. Thank you
That's
for sharing
that was
that.
so profound. That was the most important thing I could have heard.
Yeah.
Any message she goes, because I've heard people go, "Oh, Jesus is here and he has a message," whether it was me or I'm in a room with other
Mm,
people, and I'm just like,
mm.
"Oh, well, I don't want anything from this
Yeah.
thing. I don't. You
Yeah.
say Jesus and he's worthy and all that. I
Yeah.
didn't want any part of that
Yeah.
because it's part of that spiritual abuse. I think when we're
Yeah.
told, you're not worthy, it's the most supreme victim mentality. Is
Yeah.
I didn't choose to come here. My parents had sex and I just showed up. And now you're
Yeah.
telling me I'm not worthy. And
Yeah.
you're telling me that I have to choose this religious way or I
Yeah.
go to hell. I go, that's like you're telling me you have to either choose basketball or football. And I go, what if I don't want to play either? What if I want to go
Yeah.
camping? Nope, you
Yeah.
can't go camping. That's not part of the thing. You have to pick basketball or football. So you don't want to do
Yeah.
that. But I had no choice. I had
Yeah.
to choose, Ugh.
Yeah, I have long said that I think the greatest form of violence that we experience on this planet is when someone conveys to another being that it is possible for them to be separated from the divine. Because that is one of the only things that I really think is true, capital T true, is that we are inseparable from the divine. And I'm curious, given all that you've been through, what is your relationship with the divine? How do you connect, if you do now?
I've had a series of events occur in my life where I'm more than convinced that not only did I design this life, I am part of the divine experiencing it through my character. And I've
Mhm.
seen that in so many things. Part of that narrative was I live in a unsafe universe. And if you fuck it up, you're going to go to hell. Well,
Mm.
now I'm 100% convinced it's a safe universe, and in fact, I think this universe is an experiment where consciousness is trying to see, well, can I really learn who I am and love myself and these bazillions of fractalizations of characters that we're all playing? And
Yes.
it's really one thing having this game. And so,
Yes.
my very first ayahuasca ceremony informed me of that. And I saw this red neon writing and it said enjoy the ride, and I'd never heard of that before. What do you mean enjoy the ride? And this female ayahuasca voice said, David, that's what you're supposed to be doing here. You came here so you can enjoy life. I go, I am not enjoying life. And
Yeah.
in blue, it looks like a Budweiser sign. It said beliefs. And I go, what does that mean? She says, your beliefs become real. So you've believed all these things, so you're not enjoying the ride. And I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then I saw this, it looked like magnet fragments,
Yeah.
and it was shaping, and then it turned into sand, and then it was shaping, and then it turned into a universe like with galaxies and stars. And I go, what is this that I'm seeing? She goes, this is what you're doing. You're just making all of this up and you're creating this. I go, well, okay, I don't know why you say me. I'm just sitting here in ceremony. I go, you mean like God and all the angels? She goes, no, this is what you are doing. You are making this all up. I go, I don't understand. You're saying me. She goes, this is what you are doing. You are this conscious creator. You're doing this. And I went, oh, so I had just read Neil Donald Walsh said we're
Yeah.
all one. She goes, you got it. And I was like, oh, so I am 100% convinced that all the things that I still feel victimized by are my creation, and they're only there for to inform me or to
Mhm.
entertain me. Because
Okay.
maybe I was somewhere else I didn't have any problems, and in this lifetime I go, what would it be like to
Yes.
go extra hard mode? So that's
Okay.
what I'm
Yes.
journeying for some reason.
Yes, this is like a new chapter for me, is understanding that it could be to inform and it could be to entertain. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear more about that because, I think that I obviously transferred some of my Christian values into the new like spirituality and did was trying to do a lot of spiritual achiever stuff and be like, well, I'll learn from it and then then I'll get an A plus from God or whoever. But this idea that some of it could be just for the kick of it is something that I'm starting to explore. I read this book called Existential Kink. Have you heard of it?
I haven't. It sounds exciting.
Okay, yeah, it has kind of a spin on that there's like, like kink is like this little bit of like a sexual like enjoyment of something that maybe is not pure pleasure. And that there's an element to which, both the light and the dark and the manifestation of the light and the dark are both really expressions of this divine soul seeking experience seeking thing that we're doing. And I've been really like, there's something in me that feels like, okay, I like something about this. I just had a big chunk of like a revisiting victim consciousness in the past 6 months. And I am starting to realize like, I think I wanted to try that on one more time. And I wanted to like really get it super good and juicy before I'm ready to say, like, okay, I think I'm done with it. But I'd love to hear, like, how did you start to think about this, inform or entertain? Was it with this ayahuasca thing?
Yes, and I did subsequent other experiences. I also had some hypnotherapy experiences because I was just like, wow, well, there is so much information within me.
Hmm.
I mean, I was always told the pastor said this, and the Bible said this, and the guy on TV said this, and I was like, wow, I can find my answers within. And I had a hypnotherapy experience with a lady named Hila
Mm.
Kedem Ferguson. And in that, I saw myself as back in this character as this Native American Indian. And this
Mm.
time I'm riding a horse and she goes, "What's that like?" And I go, "Oh, I can just feel it. Like I don't even touch the horse's mane. I kind of hold on so I don't fall off. But me and the horse are this one thing and we're just
Mm.
gliding. And then suddenly I have a bow and arrow and I'm shooting because the white people invaded our land and there's this wagon train and I'm like shooting arrows, but they
Hmm.
got these guns, they're shooting back. And I went, oh no. I've been struck and I fall to the ground and I have a death experience and I suddenly rise above my body and I get up to the top and for whatever reason, I had this number 100 feet above my body and I look
Yeah.
down and I'm like, I am so angry at these fucking white people that
Yeah.
took our land. You killed my family. You took our land. I want to kill you so bad.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's this arm around me, like somebody, and I'm like kneeling down, looking down, and I don't know, I'm on some cloud platform or
Yeah.
something, and there's this arm around me, and it's my spirit guide, and I look
Uh.
over and I go, What are you doing? And he starts laughing. He goes, "You believed you were that Indian down there, didn't you?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Are you?" And I looked and I go, "No, I'm not." He goes, "It was just, I wanted you to have that experience. So did you. You chose that journey." And I go, "Oh no." And he goes, "Yeah, you know what you're going to do next, don't you?" I go, "Yeah, I'm going to be a white straight male, aren't I?" Yep.
Oh.
Ta-da! Here I am, Z.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so that
That
informed
is
me. I was
so
like,
fantastic.
okay, that's, and people say, was it real? Did you? I don't know, but it informed me that I'm supposed to be here. And I chose this character,
Yeah.
David. So instead of being like, oh, I'm not worthy, no,
Yeah.
I chose this.
Yeah.
Be worthy, be who I
Do
am.
it. Yeah. Live it up. Like, enjoy the ride. You got on this roller coaster. Go
Yeah.
for it. Wild. Okay, so I love this because when I my kid is now 12, and when my kid was like really little, there was all this like, is that person a good guy or a bad guy, right? Because the whole world tells you there's only these two choices, good guy and bad guy. And I would always be like, there's no such thing as good guys or bad guys. Like, they're just all guys and they're all just doing something and trying to come up with a way to experience this. And on one level, there's this whole philosophy of like, hurt people, and the only reason that you would ever be violent is because you're not feeling safe, and so you're trying to, so there's sort of that framework which I think people are starting, even outside of the spiritual world are starting to be like, okay, yeah, that's probably happening. But expanding into this, like, we just want to play all the roles, we want to try on all the costumes, we want to just see what it feels like. There was once a Ram Dass talk that he talked about, some, I think it was from Hinduism, some like big bad scary monster was in the previous life like the enlightened guru, and that they wanted to take on that experience, which can get dicey because then folks can be like, but yeah, isn't it like bad stuff happening here and we need to be like social justice warriors? And one of my first phases after Christianity was like, I'm going to be an activist, I'm going to protect others, I'm going to stop the injustice, like, what happens for you when you think about like all those things and how to put them all together with how we actually go about the day to day here?
Yeah, what really informed me was in Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh says, how do you want to be? If you see somebody that's
Mm.
hurting another person, how do you want to be? Do you want to be someone that tries to help, or do you want to be someone that tries to cause more harm? How do you want to be? And he says, that's what we're here. We're saying, well, how do I want to feel? And some people, for whatever reason, they want to be the perpetrator of abuse. And I do think that we've all played that character.
Hmm.
In this particular life, I want to be the person that helps protect other people. I want to be the person that, if somebody has a need, I want to see if I can try to solve that problem or solve that need. So I
Hmm.
think it's less about there's evil and we have to stand up against it. I think it's more about there's evil and we have to try to see, well, what is it we want to be in this? Do we want to be a part of the
Mm-hmm.
solution? Is it someone else's journey? Because there's many things that we could have as causes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's certain things I just don't have influence over. I don't get that riled up about politics the same as some of my friends because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that interest in it. I think there's negativity out there on every party and every side, and I'm just like, I don't have influence. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't interest me. When COVID came around, it just didn't interest me. I was like, I think there's a bigger energy of fear here, and I think
Yeah.
that energy of this planet is fear, fear, fear. Dolores Cannon, she's the great QHHT practitioner. She says we come to this planet to experience fear, and this doesn't exist in other places. In fact, she said this is one of the hardest places to come and have a soul journey experience. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't love being afraid and scared. I like joy and humor. And a small anecdote, I had an ayahuasca ceremony and I saw Halloween images. I saw black cats and the number 13 and scary witches, and it was cartoony. And I'm like, why am I seeing this?
Mm,
And it was like, ooh, we're gonna scare you. And I go, I
mm.
don't want this. I want joy and humor. That's what I choose. I choose not to see this. And ayahuasca ceremony literally goes and it flips 180 degrees upside down, and I see clouds and angels. It goes, cool, we can do that too. And I had a wonderful experience.
It was
And
like
I was like,
changing the channel.
I changed the channel. And I do know there's been a lot of people like, I'm scared and not, I've had a dark journey for
Yeah.
whatever, some psychedelic. And there are those real experiences. I think they're to inform us. Maybe it's about control. Maybe
Mm.
it's about releasing, letting go. I know that those things, I am not here to be an evangelist. I'm simply being an advocate for, I had an experience that changed my life. That's why I'm passionate about it, whether it was hypnotherapy or ayahuasca.
Yeah, yeah. And I was right before you said Dolores Cannon, I was going to ask you about, she's sort of, and I have not studied her. I've been exposed to her and I really like what I've learned. But she has the concept of the ascension volunteers. So
Yeah.
is it your experience that there's some sort of grand like ascension effort? And does that tie in with the Neil Donald Walsh thing about like how do you want to respond to the experience of being the aggressor or the
Yeah.
victim or
It's
whatever?
it's all tied in. One thing I put together of all of my experiences, it's all the same. Near death, quantum healing hypnosis technique, ayahuasca, numerology, astrology. All of it is that consciousness is moving forward. It's
Mm-hmm.
constantly moving forward. And yes, we have setbacks. Yes, there are egregious acts, and somehow they serve to inform our journey.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't ask me because I would have chosen to have the soul evolve through pleasure and joy rather
Yeah.
than through hardship and turmoil. And so, in fact, I had a powerful experience one time where I realized that this universe was created to have overcome obstacles, and I didn't want that.
You're
And
like, why?
I wanted joy and human pleasure. I mean, I
Yeah.
wanted to do good things, and it was like you got to learn to trust. I was like, fine, I'll learn to trust, and that's part of my journey.
Oh my gosh. To overcome obstacles. Yeah. I wish we could change the channel on that one.
Yeah.
But
And then, maybe it is just for entertainment. I mean, that's what
yeah.
Dolores Cannon says. She says, that whole fear thing, things you're afraid of, and you
Yeah.
got to get it right. She goes, it's just for entertainment. She said, in the soul realm, we're totally fine. We're like, hey, let's go play a cool game where we have to
Yeah.
go and endure all these things. And she literally says it's for entertainment purposes. She goes, don't worry about it. It'll be fine.
Wow. So that was the other thing I was curious about. For me, one of the hardest things to let go of is the spiritual achievement
Oh boy.
um
Yeah.
programming that I got from my early years. And I see myself just over and over pulling that in the now. And I am fairly sure that I don't need to keep trying so hard, that I don't need to read every spiritual book that's out there, that I don't need to, avoid watching a show or a football game or doing something that's not for the ascension. It's like I went from just trying to save people for Jesus to thinking I'm an ascension volunteer and I'm gonna I need a 12 step for recovery from spiritual achievement. What have you found for yourself in
Honestly,
that?
I still have the Messiah complex. I used to
Yeah.
want to save people from going to hell. Now I want to save them from being trapped in their own hell right
Yeah.
now. I had an experience in this meditation space where I was in this dark little room and I accidentally elbowed one of the bricks on the side and
Hmm.
the brick came out and sunshine streamed in. And as I began to kick out bricks, more sunshine until I realized, oh, I was in this dark little thing. And
Mm.
I have people in my life who are like, no, we love to be in the dark little thing because we have certainty and we're safe. And
Mm.
I begin to learn that certainty is what religion offers. Certainty, certainty.
Hmm.
There's no faith. What's the opposite of certainty? It's knowing. The opposite of certainty is like curiosity. Well, what else could
I
there be
don't
out there?
know.
And I was never offered the ability to have
Hmm.
curiosity. And, so I just think that there's a lot of space where we can learn and grow from. And yeah, just I've had to try to just don't worry about it. You don't need to save the world. I do
Yeah.
still enjoy the narrative of finding information and sharing it with
Yeah.
others. So I'm grateful there's a platform. Because if we can't have access to new thoughts, then we
Hmm.
can't change. And part
Yeah.
of the evolution is there has to be an obstacle, some resistance that has to be overcome. It's like, weight
Mm.
training, doing exercise. There's some selection pressure that
Hmm.
has to happen so that you can then say, well, I'm going to make a different decision, or, in genetics, I'm going to create a different experience. And that's how evolution comes. That's why relationships are so
Mm.
important, because that's how you mirror yourself up with another person. And then you
Hmm.
begin to experience, well, how do I act with this other person? It has such a
Hmm.
bigger depth now that I have this soul journey mindset. And, I'm like, oh, that's there to inform my soul. And, part of my experience through hypnotherapy was I had a powerful session, that same
Hmm.
Native American session where I realized I had to come back. Right after that, I went up beyond him and I was
Hmm.
on this platform in the cosmos. And I saw that this little white light very far away, it was riding a Harley Davidson motorcycle and had a leather jacket and was surrounded by other white lights. And I'm like, what is
Uh-huh.
that?
Uh-huh.
And then that white being was going to different places, but it turned and looked at me, and suddenly this shining white being is in front of me, and I recognized it. That was the face of my oldest child, and he was the one that was in active addiction.
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
gosh.
what is going on? He says,
Huh.
I'm going from soul to soul looking for someone that will have enough courage to be my father. And he says, you have enough courage. Will you be my father? And I went, oh. And I saw 65. And I go, this is going to take 65% of my life energy to do this. And I saw my wife, she was from a totally different alien dimension. And she comes over and she says, I will help you. And I was like, thank you. And then
Thank
I
you.
saw this angelic being had the face of my daughter, and she's like floating. She says, he and I have karma. Will you be my father in my life? And I see the dial go whew, all the way to full. And I go, oh no, I don't have any more energy. You're going to take all of it. The two of you just raising you and
Uh-huh.
living. Then I see this little white light and it goes, bzz, 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 and it's like a little uh, um, firefly, and it comes over and it lands, and it's my third child. And he goes, hey, will you be my father? Because I want to play this game with you guys. And I go, I can't. And I start to well up with tears and I go, I can't be your
Oh,
father. He goes, don't worry. I'm not going to take your energy. I'm going
he's
to
gonna
give you energy.
give.
And he's the loving, beautiful child. He supports us. Fast forward in time to Thanksgiving of 2021. Our son had gone through a treatment facility for his umpteenth time. He'd gotten clear. He'd volunteered. He was no longer homeless. And they
Mm.
said, we want you to come on board and be part of the team. And we were so excited. And then he disappeared for a week and we didn't know where he was.
Yeah.
He had gotten some opiates. He had no
Yeah.
resistance in his body and he had overdosed. He came to our house. We didn't know this.
Yeah.
While we went to bed that night, he overdosed himself with the last remaining. We found him unconscious downstairs and I did CPR on him again, and we were not able to revive him. His heart was able to start. They did some tests over the next couple days and he did pass. And
Mm.
I felt like his torturous journey of in and out of this
Yeah.
mental and physical torture
Yeah.
had drawn to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And I had this visual, like he left his body and he was hovering over it. And I saw myself from his perspective doing CPR on him. And I
Mm,
remember him going, "Oh, I actually left my body. Wow, I didn't think I was going to do that." But then I
mm.
felt him going, "You know what? Whew, I am free from
Actually, it's okay. Yeah.
all of that torture and torment that I was in." So he went around, they did tests, and the brain had received no oxygen. He was brain dead, and the heart was beating. They said he's eligible to be an organ donor for his kidneys.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so we were able to say yes, and they passed on the gift of life to two other families. And we sat around his or stood around his bed, the four of us holding hands, and we cried and we said, "We forgive you. Go into the light. Thank you for the journey that we've all been on." And
Mm.
we felt a resolution. And Gail heard over his mother over the back of her head. She heard, "I'm not in the body, Mom. I'm not in body," and I'm
I'm not there
so happy.
anymore.
And so that was a resolution from that experience. Gail and I
Mm.
did go our separate ways. I needed a soul journey. I needed to experience, explore, expand more things. You're capturing a snapshot in time on this podcast of a journey I'm still on.
Yeah.
I've made things. I'm positive about the things I want to do in the world. And today I can say I'm here to experience and explore. And
Mhm.
is everything perfect? No, but do I know it's going to be okay? Yeah. And that's the journey I think we're all on. And when you come to that
Mhm.
point where you're like, I just love who I am. I love where I am right now. It's not perfect. There's lots of things I could look
Mhm.
at, but I chose this journey. I'm taking authority over
Mhm.
my own ownership of my own
Mhm.
choices. And that's the joy
Mhm.
space I can live in.
Mhm. Mm. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think what you just said is the piece that changed everything for me is that I have choice, right? And I offer what I have to offer just like you do, with open hands. Take what you like, leave the rest. Um, I am no longer here to say I know anything about the way, the truth, or the life, right? I know that I didn't like how it felt to wanna die. I didn't like how it felt to feel like I was the problem and to be in perpetual self-hatred about that, and that choice piece to be able to say, "I could choose a different perspective, and whether it's absolute truth or not, if it makes me feel better, that's good enough." Was really a turning point for me, and I feel like if, there's probably nobody listening to this who's gonna come with this, but I'm sure you've had people be like, "Well, what if it's all not real?" Right? And for me, my answer to that is, it just feels better, so I'm okay with it. What
Oh
would
my
be
God.
your response?
When I was reading Conversations with God, the Bible verse, washing the water with washing your mind with the water of the word came. And I said, "Oh my goodness, I'm washing my mind away from these old
Mm,
things that no longer serve me with this new idea that I'm not a victim, that I chose my life, that I'm having these experiences that are here to inform me." And it was so peaceable. No one can ever tell me that there's a hell and I'm deceived. Because I went too far.
yep.
I've You can't unring the bell. I've just learned too much. And
Yeah.
my mom and dad, I love them so much, and they're like, well, that's a risk because what if you're wrong? Then you're going to go.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's just I don't even have the desire to convince them because I'm like, they're
Yeah.
so entrenched in that. They need to play that character. You
That's
guys need
right.
to have it. Go hardcore at it.
Yeah, do it.
You guys
Yeah.
do your thing. I no longer am I trying to convince people. There's no
Yeah.
hell. You're wrong. I'm right. I don't
Yeah.
care. Who knows what's right and wrong? I think we're creating those
That's right.
ideas of duality in our own minds. But
Yeah.
let's just go. And if you want to be a Muslim and you want to kill people that are infidels, or if you want to hurt somebody with politics and try to control someone's body, and you play your character.
Yeah.
That's not the way I choose to play my character.
Yeah. Just simply because, like you said back with, Conversations with God, you get to decide what you wanna do with this round. And I love the permission that we can give other people to say, I am pretty darn sure that I have a limited perspective. So I can't even for sure say that it makes more sense to save a life than it does to kill a life. I know that's pretty controversial, but I'm not sure, like I can only see from this vantage point. And I love that came around to in loving and accepting where your parents are, in allowing other people to not have to be convinced about anything. Sort of the same point that Jesus in the t-shirt and jeans was able to say to you, like, "Hey, I'm just over here telling you, like, I think you're great. Like, uh, you don't need to do anything for me. You don't need to listen to anything that I have to say." And maybe that's a really beautiful way to move forward on this planet and temper that messiah ness that we still have, lurking around, to remind us that we can choose what feels supportive and encouraging and joyful to us, and we can let others choose too. Give
Yeah.
them the grace to be able to do that.
Yeah, David in 2015 was looking for ideas. And so I feel like I
Mhm.
want to help David in 2015, but David in 2020, or pardon me, David in 2010 was not looking for new ideas. I was looking for reasons why I should continue to stay here. And if I proselytized and somebody agreed to what I said, there, that's confirmation that I'm on the right
Yeah.
track. So,
Yeah.
I think it's important to get new ideas and open up your mind to
Yeah.
new things, and I think we are supposed to share what we've learned.
Yeah.
Hey, I went down the road, just so you guys know, I went left instead of right, and something bad was on the left. So maybe you guys want to choose right, but hey, if you want to choose left, that's your own journey.
Yeah. I
you
just
know.
think of myself like setting out snacks on a table
Oh, I
and being
love
like,
that.
if you want some, here they are. Like, I really like this one. This one's a little salty. Like, this one's really sour. Just being like, hey, this is, if you want some, it's yours, but no
Yeah,
pressure.
so beautiful analogy.
Aw, thanks. Well, listen, this has just been, I'm going to re listen to this several times because talking with someone who has that really shared understanding, it's a gift for me. And so I really appreciate you being willing to connect and sharing so openly. Um, how can people find you? What do you want to share with the people about how to connect with you or what to receive from your beautiful snack table?
Thank you. My offering to the world is something called Journeys into the Soul. And you can go to the website. I created a documentary series of just experiencing, well, what is this modality of past life regression about? How does it work? How does it help people? And I created 20 episodes, and I just ended up connecting with people, and I drove to San Francisco and went to LA, and I went to Des Moines, Iowa on an airplane, and Portland, Oregon. And then somebody says, you should go to Europe. In fact, I'm a practitioner in Ireland. Her name was Trina Sheeran. And I'm like, I'm terrified. I don't want to go to Europe. I don't understand the language or the culture or the money or the food. I'm afraid. And she goes, don't worry about it. I'm going to help you. And I ended up taking plane flights and going to different countries and meeting everybody on this journey. And they were saying, we're all going through the same things as people. And they're finding, hey, I've got stresses in life. And this thing really bothers me. And then they experience some sort of a past life regression or some dimensional regression, and they realize, oh, that thing I experienced in that session is here to inform my current life. And so I just documented it. I created this series, Journeys into the Soul, and I am so proud of it. I watch these episodes. The epiphanies that the client gets in session absolutely apply to our lives. And there were
Mm.
personal things, and they're long sessions. I created 30-minute episodes. I needed something that was entertaining to watch, something that would be fun and inspiring. But I left the personal things out, but I put in the things that are so important. All you got to do is just be. There's nothing you need
Mm.
to do, just be. Another episode was, what are you afraid of? Just make a decision. You're so afraid to
Mhm.
get the wrong, just go ahead and make a decision. And you
Yeah.
see how she gets to that point. One of the most powerful experiences is an episode called My Shoes Don't Leak. And I was like, okay. So this guy, Scott, he's in a session, he sees himself in a past life as a little boy. He's kind of Oliver Twist in the 1800s on the streets of
Mm,
London, and he lives in Bristol, and we're filming this in Glastonbury. Glastonbury's magical, by the way. If you ever get a chance to go there, it's super
okay.
fun.
Okay.
And he says this little boy, as himself, has these wraps around his feet, and it's raining and he's cold. And at the end of this powerful session, he sees how he has been in a space of being ungrateful for things in his life. So the practitioner says, well, do you have a gift for him? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to give him my coat because I'm a big man now and I have this big, nice coat. And the little boy's so happy. She goes, well, what does the little boy give you? And he goes, oh, well, he doesn't have anything to give me. She goes, ask him. And he holds up these wraps and he gives him his shoes. And he goes, this is all I have, but I want you to have my shoes. And Scott goes, oh my God. He goes, that's all he had of value. And he goes, my shoes don't leak. I will never again take anything for granted.
Oh,
And so all these powerful messages come up from people.
yeah.
I'm like, I got to share this with the world. So it's an offering I put out there. And if people want to watch these powerful sessions and see how QHHT and Life Between Lives hypnotherapy helps people, I just I just want to offer the world. If people don't want to do it and they don't believe it, I don't need to convince you.
Yeah.
Namaste, my friends.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I just recently thought I was so clever. I came up, I was saying to a friend, namaste, and then I was like, or namasko.
I love that. My yoga teacher would say, Namaste, namasko. Everybody get out of my class. So
So
I love that.
cute. That's so cute.
I love that.
Oh, well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll put your website on the description, and hope people go check you out. Hang around for a second. I'm going to end recording and we'll say our goodbyes.